Howdy Banger fans, Blayne Smith welcoming you to another Overkill Reviews, and this is a big one. I didn't get to review their last album, so there was no way I wasn't reviewing this one. Let's go!
I want your money, your time. I want your patience and your pride. I'm all restless in a maiden, and I'm working all the time. So heaven help me, and the dollar defend me.
We're finally at one of the most anticipated albums of the year. It is the new one from Rivers of Nihil. It's called The Work. It's out today, September 24th, 2021 on Metal Blade Records. At this point, it definitely feels like this technical progressive death metal band formed in 2009 needs no introduction. This is because after the release of their third album, Where Owls Know My Name, they absolutely blew up, receiving massive attention, making a host of Album of the Year lists, including ours here at BangerTV.
My favorite metal album of 2018 was Rivers of Nihil. If you have not heard this record, shame on you.
And, of course, a little bit of ire from some of metal's most unbearable fans. They added a little bit of a lemon twist with the saxophone, and I don't know, man, it was magical. Now they have the wildly unenviable task of following up a sort of come-from-nowhere smash success that they needed to create, mostly during a massive global pandemic. If you ask me, hey, that's gonna suck. But let's find out. Let's get this out of the way. The sax is back, baby. And boy, am I really happy about that decision. I understand the band not wanting to be typecast as that sax band. These are guys that really want to make an artistic statement, but I think they made something super special with Zach Strauss. He's a fantastic saxophone player, and I appreciate them giving us a bit more, even if it is in a much reduced capacity from the previous album. As far as concessions go, that's about the only one you're gonna get, because this is an album that's almost 100% experimentation. If you thought these guys were gonna crank out, coast by on their success, just ream out another Owls Part 2, that's definitely not their style. This really seems to be a band that's trying to take the spotlight that last record gave them and elevate themselves up to prove that, hey, they're the next Mastodon, they're the next Gojira or whatever. I also say that to let you know this is an album experience. I would straight up say you can't listen or judge this album on any one song on its own. It really, nothing can exist outside of the context of the others. It's sort of like a piece of postmodern architecture. What does the other half of this building look like? Wrong, this thing's exploding out of it. The album starts out sounding like a Catatonia B-side. It reminds me of the track Unfurl, which is a Catatonia song you might not expect me to enjoy. Catatonia sound actually kind of permeates a lot of this album. If you told me Jonas Renksy was a guest vocalist, I'd believe you. That's kind of what's going on off the top until the album explodes in almost nu metal heaviness. Yes, I said nu metal in the best part section, but it's not Metal Monthly, so technically I'm not breaking my rule here. It's not a little bitty bit of Biscuit in here, though. It's far more in the Nine Inch Nails, Slipknot, Korn stuff, in part due to a lot of like dark electronics. What it does to make nu metal more palatable to someone like this guy is presented in a way that feels a little less cheap. I don't know. My issue with nu metal is always it feels like it has like a sense of impotent rage. Like, my parents are getting divorced and now I have to have 2 Christmases, hull rumpf kind of thing going on. I'm mad at them all. But because this album is so varied, it never really has time to settle in there. And while it may sound nu metal-y for a bit, well, get ready. There's a Aerosmith guitar solo. Yeah, that Aerosmith. Then we get like a bit of Sunbather Death Heaven sound before we kind of finally settle into a real, honest, full Rivers of Nile sounding track on Clean. But that's not to say there isn't a bunch of variety thrown into the more explicitly Rivers of Nile stuff in there. There's a part with synths and guitar solo that reminds me of one of my favorite video game soundtracks, and it's an obscure indie game, Risk of Rain, so I think that was probably just a coincidence, but I'm in for it. The real magnum opus of this magnum opus, I guess, comes in the middle of the album from the track The Void From Which No Sound Escapes, which, no surprise to me and probably no surprise to you, is the first track that actually features a full sax solo. Unfortunately, it's also the only track that features a full sax solo. God, I just want to talk about saxophone all day. But getting back to the review, this really feels like the peak of the mountain here. It's been a kind of union of various sounds getting to here, and then you get this really clear, defined sound from the band. It's sort of the sound they defined on Owls with a couple of new elements, but here it is at their shining glory. We made it. And that's not to say there's not more to go on the album, but the variety of the sounds from the outside influences starts to kind of creep in a bit more as we go back down the mountain, and the straight Rivers of Nile sound starts to get broken up once again. Now, the worst parts of an album like this can pretty much only get subjective because, boy, they did a very, 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 very great job. And yes, I'm going to get subjective in an album review because to continue with the postmodern theme, there's no objective review of an album, you idiots. Well, you know I love an album experience. Bell Witch is one of my favorite bands, and I don't think those guys have heard a song in their life. When we do get to Clean and it leads into The Void From Which No Sound Escapes, I was absolutely floored, and I would have also loved like 2 or 3 more of those in the middle, if not for that to be kind of the way the rest of the album goes. I loved climbing to the summit, but once I got there, I really wanted to stay, camp out, make a day of it, really take in all the frozen corpses up there. Not, kind of snap a selfie and then make my way back down the mountain. That's all I can really say, though. That's it. A lot of y'all have told me that you're actually surprised that I like Rivers of Nile as much as I do because they do have a bit of a core-y sound. And it's just because they do what they do so well that it doesn't really matter what they sound like. I'm a big believer that great music exists in every genre. It's just that some genre, it's easier to find that great music. This record is really a shining testament to that because they play from about 10 different styles with such precision, such grace, such ease, that they're sometimes doing it better than the original band that did it. But despite the fact that it could almost sound like a mixtape, Rivers of Nile manages to transform that, make sure it never crosses over into that territory. And if they're playing something, they are firmly stamping Rivers of Nile on the ass of that cow, which is why I'm also branding this album 4.5 out of 5 skulls on the ass of that cow. But we come to shout-out time. I want to shout out 2 records that you might have heard if you check out my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/metalcomedy, where we find all these albums and stuff. So, the 2 things, boy, Metal Monthly was a hard pick this month, and this one, it could have easily been in there if I swapped out one of the other records seamlessly. It's Defacement. Oh, look at that gross album cover. The album's called Defacement, the band's called Defacement. It came out on I'm Void Hanger Records, and if you want some more just weird, interesting, unique death metal, that's where you go. And then we've got Dickless, Tracy, Grave New World on Monster Billy Records. The name is ridiculous, the album title is ridiculous, but it's actually a really fun record. So that's it. Thanks to you. Hey, you notice how I didn't tell you to subscribe to an internet service you need? You notice how I didn't tell you to make a website? That's because you guys give us money, so I don't have to do that. Please help us continue to not have to tell you to do things that you don't want to do by this little thing that you probably want to do. Give us some money. Head over to our Patreon account. You guys make this happen, so our ads are just you. Thanks. Comment, subscribe. Let's talk about this album because this review could have been like 20 minutes.
Money!